be that.
Right.
You do not have a right to harass, intimidate Jewish students on campus, to keep them from going to their classes that they pay for, to keep them from going to the dining hall. It is ridiculous, and I will tell you, those campus protests, those got Trump a lot of votes. That was one of the times that I was like, I hate this man, but this is insane that it's happening, and we need a change in leadership.
That's right. Even a former Trump staffer is calling out the radical campus protests for what they are: chaos. And this wasn't some offhand remark. This was on national television. She didn't stop there. She torched the narrative, flipped the panel, and left Jaws on the floor. On this week's episode of Overtime with Bill Maher, things went from zero to real fast. Alyssa Farah Griffin, once part of Trump's inner circle, lit up the stage with brutal honesty, and no one saw it coming. If you're tired of the spin and want raw, unfiltered political takedowns, hit that subscribe button right now. It all kicked off with a simple audience question about a $400 million bombshell: Trump pulling funding from Columbia University over its failure to protect Jewish students during recent pro-Palestinian protests. Bill Maher teed up the moment, but what came next set the whole room ablaze.
What does the panel think of Trump pulling $400 million in federal funding from Columbia University for failing to protect Jewish students from harassment?
That's when Alyssa Farah Griffin, now a CNN contributor and co-host of The View, dropped a firecracker response that made even the studio audience gasp. She didn't hold back. And for a Republican-turned-Trump critic, her answer was nothing short of devastating. While the rest of the panel tried to dance around the implications of Trump's controversial move, Alyssa cut straight through the noise.
Classes that they pay for, to keep them from going to the dining hall. It is ridiculous.
Right.
You do not have a right to harass, intimidate Jewish students.
This wasn't just commentary. It was a direct challenge to the weak sauce rationalizations that often dominate media circles. And she called it what it was: harassment masquerading as protest. And while Bill Maher and others chuckled uncomfortably, the real punch came when she linked the protests directly to Trump's resurgence in the polls.
To harass, intimidate Jewish students on campus, to keep them from going to their classes that they pay for, to keep them from going to the dining hall. It is ridiculous, and I will tell you, those campus protests, those got Trump a lot of votes. That was one of the times that I was like, I hate this man, but this is insane that it's happening, and we need a change in leadership.
No spin, just truth. Let's be real. Campus chaos, anti-Semitism masked as activism, and the silencing of opposing views are not fringe problems anymore. They're front and center. And what Alyssa exposed on Overtime is what millions across the country are feeling but not seeing represented. And she wasn't speaking as an outsider. She worked for Trump. She worked for Pence. She was inside the room.
COVID and January 6th really did it for me. Listen, I worked for Pence. I worked for the Department of Defense in the first administration, and I went over to work for him during the COVID crisis.
And yet her breaking point came not from politics, but from principle.
And I left before January 6th, but I saw it going that direction and the lies about the election. And that to me just went against my values. I just couldn't be with him.
Honesty blew a hole right through the narrative that the protests are simply peaceful expressions of student discontent. Instead, she laid bare the public rage simmering just below the surface, and how it's pushing people toward leaders they once rejected. Even the applause from the audience couldn't hide the fact that this wasn't a popular message, but it was one that hit home.
Same thing happening.
A former Democratic senator agreeing, live, that the left has lost its grip on reality. That's when you know things are shifting. The loudest moment of the night wasn't the laughter. It was the unspoken realization that both sides are starting to reject the noise. When Alyssa Farah Griffin doubled down, she wasn't just condemning extremists on campuses. She was calling out the entire political machine for letting it slide.
I hate this man, but this is insane that it's happening, and we need a change in leadership.
Then came the pivot, straight into the failures of leadership from within Trump's own administration.
I, to this day, think his single greatest accomplishment was Operation Warp Speed and getting the vaccine, but then he's run away from it for the past 4 years rather than leaning into science and American ingenuity.
And just like that, boom, the illusion of Trump as the pro-science, pro-innovation president shattered.
But then he's run away from it for the past 4 years.
Even his own former staffer is saying it. He abandoned his biggest win. That's not loyalty, that's political cowardice. It wasn't just a critique of Trump, it was a dissection of a system too scared to hold its own side accountable.
And that to me just went against my values. I just couldn't be with him.
And then from across the aisle,
Same thing happening.
a Republican and a Democrat, both publicly admitting they had to walk away from their own political tribes? That's not politics. That's a seismic shift, and if that wasn't enough, Bill Maher took the conversation deeper, was into the liberal elite's exclusionary attitude, and the Kennedy Center became the battleground.
I just felt when they cut to the audience, it was just the usual suspects. And like, okay, I get it. You're right. It does skew left. But just that's what that really bugs me about the left, that exclusionary attitude.
He wasn't defending Trump. He was demanding fairness.
But you just lost. You don't have the juice to pull that off anymore.
He wasn't wrong, and neither was Alyssa, who fired back with another brutal truth.
That how much in Beltway media the story of the Kennedy Center takeover has become a big story is just once again so out of touch with the middle of this country, who doesn't even know what it is outside of watching the Kennedy Center honors once a year.
Oof! The Washington echo chamber exposed. And that wasn't the only sacred cow that got skewered. When the conversation shifted to firing squads and executions, even the gallows humor couldn't cover the brutal reality of a broken system.
How have we not gotten better at doing it in a humane way, though? I would just imagine we have the technology to make it like quick, easy, and peaceful, because I'm not going firing squad personally.
A former Trump official standing up for Jewish students and slamming campus extremists. A Democrat senator admitting he had to walk away from the system too. And a comedian host exposing the arrogance of the liberal elite. This wasn't left versus right. This was truth versus spin. And if this episode told us anything, it's that Americans are done watching the madness and staying silent. They're speaking up, they're walking away, they're watching, and so should you.